On today's episode of The Glue Guys, I'm going to try to bring some positivity. I'm going to wring it out of this Nets towel.
Yeah, shouldn't be hard.
Soaking.
2 wins.
Yeah, positivity. Hey, two-game winning streak.
Yeah.
Nets are dominant. One of the hottest teams in the NBA. We're going to talk about it right now here on The Glue Guys. Welcome back to The Glue Guys. This is Mike Arizona Brian. Check us out on Twitter at BK Glue Guys, Netsdaily.com. The Athletic. Get yourself behind the paywall at theathletic.com/glue guys, a subsidiary of the New York Times. Right.
Michael.
The Nets.
Oh,
All right.
I thought you were going to have it. You didn't have it.
Yeah, people are calling for me not to do it. They're disappointed in Steve Nash. They're disappointed in this team. And I'm going to tell you,
Wow.
hey, come on, everyone chill out, brah. Chill out,
You
dude.
know, if you're a good team, you got to win ugly, Mike. That's what they say. You got to win ugly. And that's what we're doing. We're winning really atrociously, hideously ugly. But wins, stacking dubs.
Here's my bit. I'm going to do a bit called, this is a new bit, What If I Told You?
Okay.
This is an exciting thing. Brian, what if I told you that the Nets beat the Rockets by 13 and beat the Knicks by 12 on a back-to-back? That'd be pretty good.
Be nice.
If I gave you no context,
context,
of how the games went.
I'm like, that sounds normal. That sounds like normal, winning, good, on their way to a championship basketball kind of thing to do.
What if I told you that the Nets, when they have Kevin Durant, when he plays a basketball game, their record is 34-19 this season? That equals, according to my math, a 64% winning percentage. What if I told you that when you extrapolate that out for an entire season, the Nets would have the very same record as the top-seeded Miami Heat?
Wow.
What if I told you that since Kevin Durant has returned from his knee injury, he's averaging 31 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists, which would put him squarely in the MVP discussion? What if I told you all those things were true? Would you believe me, Brian?
Sorry, am I still in a world in which I'm watching the games, or am I not watching the games? I can't.
You're
I don't
not
remember.
watching any games.
Yeah, it sounds.
You are an alien. You came down from Earth, and you're like,
sounds tight.
what are the Nets doing?
Yeah.
And I say, these are the things.
Sounds super tight. Sounds dope.
So why do we feel like it doesn't feel that good? Why does it not feel quite as good as what I just laid out?
It is a funny thing, isn't it? The optics are not aligning a little bit with the recent results. It is funny.
It's very much like Joe Biden's presidency, right?
The results are amazing. The optics are
Why are we so down? You know, I
it's-
mean, besides there's certain things that you can be down about, but why are we so down on his presidency?
It's a great.
I feel like things are pretty we're okay.
We're fine.
Everyone's okay.
It's a great point. It's a
Thank
perfect
you.
parallel.
The Nets are Joe Biden's presidency.
I like it. Put that in that's the title of the YouTube video. Yeah.
Video by
I mean, we can
Desmond
hop right into it. I mean, so these Knicks and Rocks.
Yeah, we're in the pod right now.
Yeah, we're podding. So I'll just start going. The Knicks game was really ugly, and it's hard to ignore the fact that we at this point, this late stage in the season, despite having tons of firepower, we have enough firepower to get ourselves out of any hole at any point. We're Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man 1, just in the cave. We can be in a pretty down and out situation and slap together our janky Iron Man suit and fight our way out of the Al Qaeda cave situation, and we're fine. But is that ideal? Is that the ideal situation? Do you want to be in the cave at all in the first place?
in building like a medieval Iron Man suit.
I don't think you do. But yeah,
but I do think the margin of victory. So it is hard to win a game in the NBA, and it's hard to win by blowout. And I would classify a game which the score ends by a 13-point victory and a 12-point victory pretty close to a blowout. Pretty close, on the edge.
I mean, it's definitely a subjective thing, but yeah, fair.
Yeah, and so, but neither of those games at all felt like blowouts in the least bit.
No.
And because the Knicks game was extremely an extreme example of this current Nets team, where during the game there's such disappointment, there's a lack of energy, there doesn't seem to be much of an offense besides, hey Kevin, here's the ball, hey Kyrie, here's the ball.
Yeah.
Right. And Seth Curry's trying to run some type of offense, but ultimately he's not being received in the way that I think he would like to be.
And can I also offer another little I think it has a downstream negative effect on people like, Patty Mills had a great game last night compared to, what's been going on recently. But he's kind of picking up the bad habits. He's like seeing what Kyrie Irving's doing. He's like, let's do it. I think I could do it. I can ride on that. We're not really running any plays. And even the role players who should be kind of doing drive and kicky stuff. And when it does happen, it's like, oh my gosh, we just did a drive and kick. I can't believe what I just saw. Really basic offensive sets, like just not even offensive set, just like a read and react kind of bare bones offensive minded thing to do outside of just watching KD and Kyrie take turns. When they're really locked into, they're taking turns. And again, it's the second half of a back-to-back. They're like, their legs are heavy, their brains are heavy. All they want to do is, fall out of bed
eat their mom's spaghetti. Yeah.
Eat their mom's spaghetti. So like, I'm trying not to blow this out of proportion, but based on the last couple of games, it does like appear it's like, where's the offensive system? Is there one? Was there ever one? Matt Brooks on the last episode talked about requiring some kind of connective tissue. I think we've been talking about that a little bit recently ourselves. It does appear to be that KD and Kyrie would really benefit from and I'm not saying names. I'm not going to say people's names like Ben Simmons. Certainly not going to name he who shall not be named, James Harden, as the connective tissue. But if there is a way to patchwork that connective tissue in this short amount of time for the playoffs, I would really want to start emphasizing whatever that is. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so I think Goran has that ability.
Yeah.
His shot hasn't been strong enough. So that's the problem where Goran is the only true point guard on this team. Kyrie Irving just isn't a point guard, which is fine. He's an electric scorer, but he ultimately, and he can pass, he can make fantastic passes. He made one in the Knicks game. He made one in the Rockets game. Yeah, he's an amazing passer, but he's not a point guard. The point guard needs to be the person that can see, can set up all the pieces, can be able to kind of drive to the bucket to then dish it out to shooters on the wing, to kind of create some motion on the offense that then gets Kevin Durant open, or at least Kevin Durant moving toward the bucket. They don't have any guy like that now that James Harden's off the team. Goran is obviously, I think he has COVID, right? I think he's in health and safety protocols. And obviously we hope everything's okay and that he will be back. The problem is that he's only played, 8 games or so with this team, pretty much like every net. And
it's a lot to ask. It's a lot to
That's
ask.
what's so tantalizing and almost frustrating about this team is that like we can see the potential is like right there. It's almost, this is going to be kind of a spoiler, but I'm going to do it. And I know you're not watching Moon Knight on Disney Plus. Oscar Isaac.
How do you know?
Are you?
I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay, yeah. Okay. But this doesn't ruin anything, but Moon Knight has multiple personalities, and he can talk to one of his other personalities through a mirror. And he's like, the other personality is almost trapped in that mirror. And the Nets are the Moon Knight when he can't quite break out of that mirror. They can see, like, you can see what they could become. Like, I can see it, but they're trapped in this multiverse, other dimension. In this, that's even a better one if we're talking multiverse.
Let's get crazy.
Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, May 6th. Get your tickets now, Fandango.com.
Okay.
There's a multiversal version of the Nets that is out there, that they have had health, that COVID doesn't exist, and that they are winning 5 championships in a row. Yeah. We're stuck in the reality where, God, we know that there's this other reality out there, but where we're stuck is like this team doesn't gel. All these pieces are kind of shoved together. It's a lot of talent. There's Ben Simmons on the sideline, the ultimate tantalizing piece, but we can't quite attain him because he has, as I detailed in our Glue Guys Investigate series, which is award-winning, and I appreciate everyone
Pulitzer
voting for us. Pulitzer, and Nobel. And one
a double, a twofer, eh?
Yeah.
What's better? What do you like? What's more impressive? Nobel, right? Got to be the Nobel.
Would you rather go to dinner with someone who won the Nobel or Pulitzer? I'd probably neither.
Wow.
I would go for MTV Movie Award.
That's fired.
I would rather hang out with an MTV Movie Award Best Kisser than either of those people.
You want to hang out
no
with
shots at Greta Thunberg
with Crazy Town,
or anyone else. So it's just, we can see it. And I think that's what the frustration is. Like, we know that there's this higher level of basketball that could be attained by any amount of cohesion, But this team, they are the anti-cohesive team.
Mm.
They are the substance that you put on Gorilla Glue to get Gorilla Glue off your fingers. That is what this team is. They refuse to cohese.
Okay.
An
anticoagulant? Is that what would you call it?
Oh, is that what it's actually called?
Shot in the dark. We'll see.
I love it. But
yeah.
They are winning. And do you know where they are in the standings? If you're on the YouTube, the standings are right behind me, and the Nets are very interesting in the standings, Brian, which we will have to touch on at some point in this episode. But they are currently the 8th seed, only a game back from the Cavs. They play the Cavaliers on tomorrow night. In a game that could very much decide whether the Nets have a home play-in game or if they are on the road. I mean, they potentially could be in the 9-10 still.
Yeah.
Very easily. So
Evan Mobley to return also potentially in that game. Per usual.
So what do you give me your temperature meter on the team?
Oh boy. I mean,
it's so tough to pin down.
It is because it's like, with that amount of firepower, look, you have the Iron, you just have a brain that can conceive of an Iron Man suit, like I say. And the Iron Man suit is, it's a great weapon. It's super we were talking about, you used multiverse. We went simulations, last night we were talking this simulation is,
sure. Is shitty?
Is a shitty. We're in a shitty.
We got screwed.
Yeah, we got to break out. I'm also thinking about in the fourth Matrix, they should have made it. And spoiler alert, this is not really a spoiler alert at all. Don't you think it'd be fun if they're in the Nebuchadnezzar and they find out that that's just another simulation, that they're stuck in just yet another simulation, and they've all been fighting for just a non.
You mean the Dark Zion real world?
Like if you were the machines, wouldn't you design a Matrix where you could have this big escape the Matrix sort of subplot,
right?
And then
almost like a rat maze or something,
right? And then you're stuck in what is yet another Matrix that you think is outside of the OG Matrix. I'm just saying. I'm just thinking as from a machine's perspective, Mike.
Yeah, I don't think whichever Wachowski sister
Lana,
put that out really cared all that much about the movie.
Shots fired.
Sorry.
Shots fired.
The movie was disgrace.
I think everybody's on the same page with who knows? I hate to say it, it's not really strong analysis, and you expect more from a Brooklyn Nets podcast, and I'm just calling it like I see it. Okay, I'm not trying to put in any pretense here. I think we are in perpetual states of evolution, and sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really bad. I will say though, again, just going back to this point, there has never been a moment where I've been just the KD plus Kyrie offense is oh, this is truly, a can of Nos in my streetcar. They themselves are individually great scorers, and there's no disputing that. Obviously, it's not a hot take. But they do not appear to be better than the sum of their parts, which sucks. But their individual parts are good enough to get pretty friggin' far. So, do you want to just kick it right to the email? Should we just integrate that?
I want to do one little bit, and because I see this brought up often, and I brought it up on this own show of how the Nets championship odds remain unchanged. The Nets are, I think, the favorite in a lot of books to win the championship this season, which feels like such an odd thing because they're not that good. They may not even make the playoffs. They make the play-in, but may not be in the playoffs. The thing I'll say though is that there's no incentive ultimately for the odds makers to really move down the Nets line.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're betting the other side. It's not like in a normal bet. If you're betting a single game, you're betting two sides. When you're betting sort of a long-term futures bet, which involves championship odds, yeah, you could bet on the Suns or the Bucks, but that has no impact on the Nets. Vegas wants as many people to spend money and make bets as possible. So yeah, hypothetically, they could drop the Nets odds to plus 1,000, and that would drive a lot of interest from bettors because they think that's great value, and Vegas could be very sure that they know that the Nets won't win the championship. But ultimately, that's not gonna drive a massive amount of betting, and they'd rather have the protection of low odds. And so again, the Nets are right now, according to DraftKings, they have the third best odds to win the NBA championship. It's the Suns plus 260, which is a pretty sizable number. Bucks plus 550, and then the Nets plus 600. The team behind them are the Warriors at plus 800. So the Nets are firmly in that second tier with the Bucks. There's just not much. So like everyone's like, oh, the Nets are still favorites. They're favorites just because their odd had been inflated so much early on when Vegas thought that the Nets at some point would have James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. And it's sort of maintained.
The idea, and I'm sure somebody will bring this into the emails, but like the idea that we're just gonna like throw Ben Simmons into just playoff basketball and have that just be, you know, a perfect fit and just be off and running without any kind of friction at all is it is optimistic, to say the least.
He is literally the hardest NBA superstar, for calling him a superstar, to fit into a team.
Yeah. He
does a lot of things that should fit, but because he can't shoot, it alters sort of everything, the fabric of your team.
Yeah, and mostly people just have to learn how to play with Ben Simmons, and it raises the ceiling enormously, but in the short term, it's a big, it's a growth. You're going to have some growth pains, some growing pains.
Let's do the first quick break. Coming back, emails, so many good questions. And we're going to talk about the Nets playoff picture because it's very, very important. And we're back. Brian, let's get to the emails.
First up, that's Cheerboy Saro Kutri. Beautiful name. Beautiful name from a beautiful person. Hey, fellas. We all know the season has not been fun for a lot of reasons, despite all of its promise. No need to rehash all the letdowns. I have more of a statement than a question. Can all of #NetsWorld just start pulling to be the 10th seed together, embrace the villainhood, and go with a scorched earth mentality to just push and fight and kick until the ride ends? We need to all be thinking of what's to come, like the final seed of Django Unchained. Keep up the great work, Sorrow. Are we ready to make this really hard on ourselves?
I've thought about this so much.
Yeah.
So much. I mean, again, if you're on the YouTube audience, shout out to the YouTube crowd, the gang, as we call them the gang.
We do.
I have the standings behind me. I talked to Alex Schiffer off the record about this, but I'll reveal what we talked about. The path from the current path, which we see it. And if everyone's listening to this, just pop up on your phone the standings. Currently, the Heat are the number 1 seed in the East. Boston's 2, Milwaukee's 3, Philly's 4, Toronto's 5. Toronto's gone all the way to 5, which is terrifying for a lot of teams. But Charlotte is 2 games, I think a game and a half behind Brooklyn. Charlotte's the 10th seed. The Nets becoming the 8th seed is a better path because you play Miami in the first round. And then as it is right now, but it could change drastically because things are so tight between 2, 3, and 4, then you could play Philly or Toronto. Now, I listed Toronto as the scariest team to me because of their vaccine policies. Scariest team for the Nets to play in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think Philly is a decent matchup against Toronto because Embiid should be able to score 50 a night. So then if you could play Philly in the second round, I love that much more than Boston in the first round and Milwaukee in the second round. And then you have to play, you know, Toronto or Philly or Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals.
If things stay basically exactly how they are, as they are behind you, I feel pretty good about that road ahead. That feels pretty good.
I mean, Miami by far, we talked about this, is the team of the top 4 teams in the East. Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, Philly. Mm-hmm. Miami, I think by many, many miles, is the team I want to see the Nets play. They're still scary. They can play the extremely switchable defense. They have PJ Tucker, Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. You know, Tyler Hero could go off. Duncan Robinson could have a really good game. All that stuff. They're the number 1 seed in the East. But I'd rather that than like Boston scares me because I don't think Robert Williams is going to come back for the first round.
Not in the first round.
But there's still enough infrastructural defensive power.
It's a real team. What we want to avoid are real teams, you know, by and large.
Milwaukee should be scary in a first round matchup.
Can you just move to the left a little bit so I can see the Cavs win total?
Left?
Or the right, or which might,
Sorry.
The chair. What's the win differential there between Cavs and Nets?
So right now the Nets are a game down in the win. So the Nets are a game back from the Cavaliers. Okay. And all they need to do, so here's the upcoming schedule. So here's what we're looking at. The Cavs are the 7th seed right now. And the Nets play the Cavs on, what is it, Friday night, like we talked about. That is a huge game. And then the Cavaliers, I think, play the Milwaukee Bucks to finish out the season.
Yeah.
In a game where like Milwaukee probably should be still trying at that point. There's a lot of playoff seeding that could be figured out in that moment. Mm-hmm. Do you want to? So let me ask you this: do you care about being the 7th seed?
I mean,
do you care about having that home playoff game?
Not necessarily. I think just, and not to like, there's too many unknowns to really try to like position yourself just so to play who you want to play in the first and second rounds or whatever. But as much as we want to be fortuitous in that regard, I mean, playing the Heat in the first round and Sixers in the second round also, but you run the risk of the Raptors actually beating the Sixers, and then that's a true nightmare. Which again, I agree with you. I think that the Sixers win that series. But worst case scenario, that happens. That's a pretty tricky spot to be in. But either way, I do like where it currently is. So, I mean, you don't ever want to throttle anything. And obviously we have so much learning to do about ourselves that we should be treating these games like playoff games anyways, just because we're, it feels like such a, like a noob team at the moment. But yeah, so I, in as much as you can throttle these things, which I don't think you can really have much control over it, I do like where it's currently at and would want to preserve that as much as possible.
The key thing is, if you are a fan of tanking for the 10, which is pretty hard to do at this point, the Nets would have to lose all their games, and that would be very disappointing. I think that the Nets still have to play like the Pacers and another bad team coming up. Mm-hmm. Or no, they only have 2 games left anyways. That if you put yourself in the 10 spot or the 9 spot, you could be knocked out in the first round of the play-in, right? Because whoever loses in that 9-10 matchup is done.
Yeah.
So I would prefer to remain 7-8 for that very reason, to give the Nets that cushion to be like, let's say they're still figuring stuff out. Let's say Ben Simmons is very close to being back. I would rather have the cushion of potentially losing in the 7-8 and then dropping down and then playing the winner of the 9-10. The thing is, that winner probably is the Hawks, and I really don't want to see the Hawks. I want it to maintain as is. I want it to be Cavs Nets in that first round play-in. I actually don't care where that game is. It has no impact on my life.
Wow.
But the Nets pretty much need to win anyways to maintain, to be in that 7-8. So yeah, it's a sticky wicket, as we like to call it.
Well,
Brian, sticky wicket.
Thank you to Sorrow. We went 12 rounds on that one. But next up that's Cheerboy. That's James Jimbo Crothers. James Crothers from the Bayou. He's from the Bayou. He heralds from. I just made that up. I just felt like a Bayou kind of name.
We're big in the Bayou.
Hey, Gluman, what are your thoughts on Steve Nash returning next year? Do you think Marks and Co. will look to switch things up and bring in a veteran coach? Thanks. I do feel like this is. I hate to say it, but if you have a not good showing in the first round, if we're a first round exit, or even worse, a non-playoff team at all, I do think Steve Nash is finally going to get a very serious evaluation. I think just, again, going back to the optics of like, not only just offensively, but like just watching ourselves play defense on both of those games last night. Like, we're just not, we are not an organized group of people. And to the extent which, like, we needed Steve Nash to get here, right? The politicking, as we've often talked about, has been incredibly important. But now we have some sense of, completion regarding the Kyrie Irving situation. We have, obviously, Kevin Durant under contract for the foreseeable future. It is time to start executing at a much higher level. And I have yet to see the evidence outside of the D'Antoni system, where James Harden again was like a pretty big part of it. Like, I don't want to keep doing this, but we have not seen Steve Nash on his own develop that sense of cohesion and that level of execution yet. So I actually do
cohesion and Cambrio.
Cohesion and Cambrio. We've not seen it to this point. So I do got to think, like, hey, great job. You've parachuted in. You took the brunt of a whole lot of like headline BS stuff over the years, and super appreciate it. But it's either a stern warning, or if it's truly a non play on non-playoff experience or like pretty like even-handed smack out of the first round, it may be time, Mike. It may be time.
Yeah, so this all depends on the person who's going to make this decision is Kevin Durant, right? And we've already had a piece of evidence that seems to make us believe that Kevin Durant has supported Steve Nash in the reporting before James Harden was traded, or I even think right after. There was the idea that James Harden wanted to play a certain style of basketball, and that Kevin Durant and Steve Nash wanted to play another way. And so that leads one to believe that what Steve Nash is doing, Kevin Durant likes. They obviously have this relationship. It'll be extremely interesting to see what happens if they get knocked out of the play-in. They don't even make the true top 8 teams in the East in the real playoffs. I think there has to be some major evaluation, no matter what excuses could be made. And there are so many excuses. There still has to be a level of, are we sure we're maximizing this window that we got with Kevin Durant? I will throw out a very interesting name that I know won't happen, but hey, I'm a reckless podcaster, and this is what I'm going to do. There's only a select group of coaches who could ever sort of satisfy firing Steve Nash and bringing in over Steve Nash, that would be able to have a personal relationship with one of the stars that they would respect greatly. You know, there's people like Pop. Pop is still coaching the Spurs. Doc Rivers seems to like, if the 76ers get knocked out, Doc Rivers would be available. And maybe, you know, the Nets could see that, but Ben Simmons is here, and it would be hard to see Ben Simmons, not that he has much say in the issue. It would seem to be hard to bring in Doc Rivers if Ben Simmons is here, right? But Seth Curry's here. Seth Curry's his son-in-law. Here's the name that I've got for you, Brian. He's a coach that just retired. Coach Mike Krzyzewski.
Wow.
Coach Mike Krzyzewski has flirted with the NBA. He almost took the Lakers job when Kobe Bryant was there. Coach K famously turned around Team USA basketball. And who was on that team? Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving went to Duke. I'm sure Kyrie has a great relationship with Coach Mike Krzyzewski. Wow. If Joe Tsai was going to bring in another coach, Joe Tsai is marketing minded, just like you and I. All three of us are very similar. Very similar. Marketing. Coach K coaching on the sidelines, and it would be, talk about Joe Biden, be very Joe Biden situation. Be like, hey, 1-year term. I'm going to come in. We're going to win a championship. Coach K, who probably considers himself the greatest coach of college basketball, there's some competitive.
You wouldn't consider him that. That's not.
I wouldn't consider him that. Jim Boeheim. No, but what would be something that he could do that would be different, that he could walk into a situation to potentially, if he won an NBA championship with the Brooklyn Nets, he would be the greatest coach in basketball history.
I love it. I love this take.
One of the greatest, if not the greatest, college basketball coach.
Has anyone else
turned around Team USA
doing this take? It's a great take.
I mean, no one does it because everyone knows it's not happening.
Yeah.
But they're not removing Steve Nash unless if it's for a very select group of coaches, and maybe Mike D'Antoni's in that too. Though what an awkward sort of move that would be if D'Antoni was like, I was an assistant and then I'm your mentor, and then I'm like, hey Steve, get out of here. But it's like Pop or Coach K basically, or Pat Riley, and obviously Pat Riley's not doing that. So Phil Jackson, I guess, is another name, but Phil doesn't seem to be physically able to do that, and he's locked in with the Lakers. Like, there's more of a chance if Phil's going to come back and be with the Lakers. So Coach K is going to be your Nets 2022, 2023 coach.
Big take. Next up, that's Sure Boy. That's Dan from Virginia. Dan from Virginia, not the Bayou. He says, the Nets have a death lineup, basically KD at the 5, surrounded by all available shooters, that fulfills the whole concept of why this particular big 3/duo was put together. Even factoring in the KD injury, they probably lost 5 to 10 games because they refused to use this death lineup. Any theories as to why? I believe Nash is old school and withholds things for the playoffs. Interesting take. I like the idea that did you like my radio voice I put on the...
Yeah, that was great. I was really
Funny, the one part of this that I vehemently disagree with is that Nash withholds things for the playoffs. I don't. Maybe it's possible, but what if like all of a sudden we're just like the best in the playoffs, like best offense ever,
the best. Do you remember when Nash was hired and that first training camp? All the players, including Reggie Perry, shout out Reggie Perry, we're trying to figure out what kind of coach Nash should be, and they said the things he's doing on defense will blow people's minds. I remember the talk about his defensive strategy was revolutionary, and we haven't seen an ounce of that so far in his 2 seasons.
Here's the question, though. I guess what he's taking issue with is that we're playing, traditional centers and Claxton and Drummond instead of KD at the 5, which is, I mean, it's an interesting thought that like it's like, hey, this is what the team was built for, but I guess like supplementing just the one player, like if we're just looking at like one traditional center plus like 4 effectively like death lineup style players, which are, I mean, if we can call it what it's like drive and kick, but like rangy players who are like above average to good passers. I do think like it's a stretch to call it like the death lineup because I mean, a couple of players on there are really, really good passers. Like Steph Curry and Draymond were like elite passers. People forget that, where like Kevin Durant has picked up the slack for sure in playmaking, and Kyrie, kind of can portal in and out of playmaking when he wants to. But I haven't yet really seen, even with a like the 4-person version of it, I haven't really seen a lot of evidence that they're even trying to do that as often as they should. There isn't like, oh, if it wasn't just for like this one player who's like not stretching out the floor with us, like we could do this. It just doesn't feel like that's part of the ambition. And this goes back to, and we've talked about this a million times, but like KD straight up hated that style of basketball and was pretty vocal about it. And like you've been talking about, it's like, it's really up to KD. We've given him an enormous amount of control over what we do on the court.
Yeah.
And what his take has often been,
we are like, Britney Spears, and he's our parents. He controls our entire life. I'm fine with that. No, don't free Britney over here.
His take on this has always been like, yeah, all that stuff is really cool to win regular season games, but if you're trying to win playoff games and the game, these possessions get much more half court and tighter, and having a just offense, like just half court offensive weapons is like, but just bucket getters. I think Kevin Durant respects above all bucket getting, the act of it.
His entire career has been based around, and his like personal life seems to be based around the fact that he's friends with Kyrie. I think is mostly based around the fact that he respects the bucket getting.
Yeah, totally.
I of course I love the lineup of death. The problem is there are 2 people missing from, well, really 3, but I'll say 2.5 are missing from what should be the lineup of death. Joe Harris would have been crucial in lineup of death because the current death lineup right now, I guess, is Kyrie, Seth, Patty Mills, KD, and who would be the 4th or the 5th shooter, I guess. I don't even know, because this team doesn't really have that next guy. So if you actually had Joe Harris is the 2nd tallest in that lineup, taller than Kyrie, Seth, and Patty Mills. He can somewhat play wing defense, though he's not obviously amazing at it. They're really missing Joe Harris, because if you have Patty, Kyrie, and Seth, you're going to get nuked on the defensive end of the floor. And Kevin Durant's best aspect of it being a defender is his off-ball defense, the fact that he can swoop in like a pterodactyl and block the ball. They're also missing Jeff Green. Mm-hmm. Like we talked about before the season, would you rather have Jeff Green or Blake Griffin? And it felt like we were kind of like, we love Jeff Green. You were great. But Blake had shown a lot in the playoffs, and we were excited about that. This team's missing the 6'8" athletic three-point shooter big time. And if they had him, then you could do the lineup of death, because then Jeff Green's playing center and KD's swooping in, and then Jeff Green could pop out on offense and hit the threes, hit the corner 3 and all that stuff. I hate to do this because we just did Glue Guys Investigates, and I don't think Ben Simmons is going to play this year. But if you have Ben Simmons, horrible shooter, we know that. But at least he would do so much for you defensively. He would do so much for you in transition offense. And then on it, when it's a set offense, he could basically do what Bruce Brown has done, which is hang out in the dunker spot, kind of operate around the elbows, and wait for the ball to kind of flow to him. and then you have a big enough lineup where if it's KD and Ben Simmons, then you can deal with having a smaller a backcourt, right? But yeah, Ben Simmons is like, they kind of need him. I don't know. He's kind of a big deal. I wish they had James Harden.
Okay. Last up, finally, Cheer Boy.
Cheer Boy.
That's Alan. Alan Caput. Hey guys, longtime listener and Twitter follower. Hey, I was wondering how much of an impact you see guys like Cam, Kess, and Sharp having next year, considering that we have 10 free agents this offseason. Do you feel like those guys can be productive enough that we don't need to do a complete roster overhaul? Good question. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, just because I'm feeling like Cam is a bigger project lately than I originally thought. There's been a you know what it is? It's an identity issue that Cam is struggling with a little bit. He came out like hot with like, I'm gonna blow off the doors of this league and just be an elite scorer. He's way trimmed that back to the point now where he's like, I don't really know where I pick my spots. And also I think like he's hesitant to use what is his greatest asset, which is his thighs, and I
thought you were going to say ass. Yeah.
His ass and thighs. And he is perpetually going to step back jumpers from the mid range. He's picked up on, again, like that's sort of like it seems to be it's infectious on this team that everyone's now deferring to these like playmaking, step backy, inefficient shots that like Kyrie and KD happen to specialize in, but that should not be everyone's bag. We should not be teaching that, and I don't think that we are, but maybe they're just picking it up.
We all can't act like Jared Leto on
we can't
set,
we can't
we all can't just be making people wheel us around like we're Morbius.
If Cam could just
do it,
he just needs to meditate on the fact that he is built like a medicine ball, and he does need to be barreling down the paint, getting a lot of contact. And
he's an amazing free throw shooter. So
really, it's, again, I keep bringing this up, but it borrow a little bit from the Harden of yesteryear and be one of those high efficiency trolley, basically a guy who can either shoot threes or just be driving to the basket hard enough to draw
Jalen
contact.
Brunson does it for the Mavericks, and I was impressed by it because he's not overly quick. He's also a bowling ball type guard. Cam actually has more size than Jalen Brunson, and Jalen Brunson gets into the bucket, gets into the basket and creates the have. Yeah, I agree with you.
But so Kess and Sharp, otherwise. So anyways, that's not to the point that's to the real question. It's like, are we able to rely on these guys next season in a world in which we let a whole bunch of free agents walk? I don't personally think so. That's my. I don't know that we're. Again, like this team has been basically pulling out truly great veterans off the waiver wire and out of the bargain bin for the last 2 to 3 years. I doubt highly that. I mean, again, like everyone's, career trajectory, it's so far so good. I don't want to come down too hard on Cam, but like there's, some evidence that he can be good and great. And Kess is obviously much more of a utility player, kind of 3-and-D bro with a little bit more upside. Dayron, I go back and forth on, but I don't want to be in a position where I'm relying on them night in, night out in the way that we were in January. That was fun and it was a great energizing thing, but at the same time, it was also like it kind of like there was a petering out process of like when the excitement actually becomes, when you actually have to run real offenses against real teams, you're going to have less success with that amount of inexperience. And we're in a championship window, Mike. We need championship vets. Every time you go, you have a window like this, there just seems to be a bevy of options from this grand buffet of veterans that come around every year. So while I like having them around and I think that they're plug and play, I don't want to like build around those 3 guys. But maybe
and just to orient people a bit, next year here's who's like potentially guaranteed to be on the team. Kevin Durant, who has signed his contract. Kyrie Irving has a player option, but it seems like he was going to decline it and probably sign an extension with the Nets or someone else. But let's say he's on the Nets. Simmons is here. Joe Harris is here for 2 more years. Seth has 1 more year on his contract for next year. Patty Mills has a player option for the taxpayer mid-level amount. And it's at 6.1. It's almost 6.2. I feel like there would definitely be another team to pay him the taxpayer mid-level. I wonder if he wants to stay here. I don't know. It's kind of been a rough year for him to finish out. But let's assume he's on the team next year because that's a decent amount of money. And anyways, okay, so that's the lineup. Everyone else is Cam, Day'Ron, David Duke, and Kessler Edwards. Bruce Brown is not signed past this year. Blake, LaMarcus gone, James Johnson. The thing about Drummond that most people, everyone got up in arms and they're like, oh, he says he doesn't want to be here next year. It's only because the Nets can only, at the highest amount of money that they can offer him, is the taxpayer mid-level as well. So that's $6.2 million next year. I'm going to guess he's at least going to get that, if not more than that, going into free agency. So Drummond's not going to be here. Nick Claxton, I think they have his bird rights, so they can probably pay Nick Claxton whatever they want up to a certain amount of money. And they're going to be an influx of veteran free agents to come onto this team, even if the Nets lose in the play, because guys are still going to want to play in Brooklyn with KD and Kyrie on some level. Of those three, Day'Ron, Cam, and Kessler, I guess I'm most confident that Kessler Edwards is going to be a rotational piece next year. I've been really impressed with his improvement on the ball handling aspect of it all, because he came in and not being able to ball handle, and now he can do a little bit of something. He's a shooter and he's a really good defender. I'm excited. Here's what I'm excited for, and I know we have to wrap up, is that all three are going to be in the Nets system in the offseason and will have a chance to improve. Where last offseason, there's the draft process where they're trying to train for the draft process, and then they're barely on the team, and then it's training camp, and then the season goes. All these guys seem like workers, which is exciting. So Cam has a bunch of potential. Kessler has potential, and so does Day'Ron Sharpe. All these guys have potential. If I were to rank who's going to actually contribute, I would go Kessler, Cam, Day'Ron. Day'Ron is just, it's hard to be young and big and not be you have to be uber athletic to be a contributor early on in the NBA. So
love it. Take us out of here, Mike.
Welcome back to the, oh wait, no, we already did that. This is the Glue Guys at BK Glue Guys on Twitter, Discord. Hop in the Discord. You get to the Discord.
We got a new vanity. Got a new vanity URL. So it's discord.gg/Glue Guys. Dead simple. There's no alphanumeric anymore because we got boosted. Anyways, thanks everybody. See you guys soon. Bye.